Call this meeting of the Capital Program Committee to order. I believe we're being audio video recorded. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, that carries unanimously, no dissent. There are no members of the public here for public comment. Roll call, present currently Richard Hussey, Nat Knoll, Peter Kaiser, myself, Stephen Welch, and Christy Kickham. We have, can you get a motion to approve the minutes of September 6th?
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna abstain, otherwise all in favor.
Aye.
And a motion for the September 13th and 20th to be held for review. Okay, that carries unanimously, no dissent. This morning we have Mark Willett here to discuss FY20 capital requests for Wanacommet and Sconset Water Companies, and to look out into the beyond and out years. Mark, we're gonna hand the floor to you.
Okay. So for Wanacommet, we kind of changed the focus. We're still focusing on updating and upgrading the system. With all the growth that's been going on the island and with stresses on the system, we put in a request for capital on a new source approval for a new well. It all relates back to our permit. I have a sheet here that just kind of summarizes some of the growth and the numbers we're talking about. I can hand you guys just so you can kind of go down it. We had planned on a new source maybe 7 or 8, 9, 10 years down the road, but with what's been going on, we're probably going to have to up the food chain pretty fast.
Thank you, sir.
Long time no see. Here's just a list of developments that are currently, some of them are currently underway. We have others that I did not put on this list. So we totalized the units on here, how many millions of gallons a year for each project, and a daily consumption for those projects. So our current permit, which is under review, we can pump 1.68 million gallons a day. That has to be our average at the end of the year. They know in the summertime we're going to pump way over that, but in the wintertime, you know, this time of year things really start to fall back. So we are already at the 1.68. So if you take our 1.68 and then you add just the gallons from the development, our daily average would be 1.8, a little higher than 1.8, 1.85. When talking with the state, and they're getting close to finalizing our 20-year permit, they're saying our permitted number for 2021 is going to be 1.9 million gallon a day average. Well, if we just build these that are currently underway, we're going to be at the 1.9, and that's not counting the 75 to 100 new connections we do every year.
Mark, just what year is that?
2021, they're projecting us for 1.9 million a day average, and we'd have to carry that for 5 years through 2026.
Can you just repeat that 75 to 100 just connections? Like
That we just
random.
do random.
Yep.
Every year for the last 5
Okay.
years, we've been averaging 75 to 100 new
Yep.
services,
Yep.
not counting any of these.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Subdivision.
That's what I was just wanted to.
Thank you.
And we don't know, you know, we all don't know if these will actually all be built out to maximum capacity or
Yeah.
if they're not gonna get there. But we have to assume that they are just based on water production. What a new source does for us is these permit numbers that you see down here, the 2021, 2026, and 2031, those are gonna be pretty hard set numbers by the state. Now we can roll into the next one sooner than 5 years. So say at some point in 2023, the 1.9 isn't working for Nantucket and we're pumping more than that. I can petition the DEP and say, can we roll to the 2026? And they'll say, sure. But what we're doing is we're trying to fence in that racing horse, so eventually we're gonna get to the point where we can't go over the 2.31. What that would do is the first thing they would do is talk about water restrictions and outside water use. They probably won't increase these numbers, so that would mean economically to the island, I think, when we start restricting water use, like in the boat basin, you know, no washing of boats, no landscaping irrigation, washing your car, washing your truck. That has a pretty big economic impact on the island. Yep.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please, Richard.
I'm just a little confused as to why these new units that are coming online increase water when presumably these people are already living here.
That factors in there.
Catch 22.
Excuse me,
It's like the
could
crack.
everybody make sure your mics are on
Oh, sorry.
and use them?
Yep, sorry.
Okay, my question was,
Yep.
presumably these people are living here that are going into these new units, so
Right.
just educate me on how it increases water consumption.
So the way it works with the state and the permitting process, they understand that there's gonna be families in a garage apartment or in a basement apartment that will move into that. So that water use is in there and it's just moving to a different part of the island. But for permitting, they
Yes.
wanna look at max
They're looking-
capacity.
yeah.
What would happen if no locals took these and these were all new uses? There's no real mathematical way for us to determine, and if you guys know, I would love to hear, to make a guess on how many of these are gonna be already Wannacomic customers and how many new ones will there be out of that?
That's an algorithm.
I'm algorithming lots of things right now,
Yeah.
and narrativing too.
Picture?
So
Sorry.
it's pretty crucial for us to start looking for a new source. A new source through the state permitting process could take up to 5 years. We can get on the fast track, which they call fast track, which could be 3 years. So it's a lengthy process. I've been talking with Eric and members of the land bank. We're discussing swapping the land at Wannacomet or at Washing Pond. We have over 18 acres around that pond that we currently Wannacomet maintains, and we've cut it and it's kind of a grassy
Yep.
looking land. And swapping them acre for acre for an 18-acre piece, which we need for our Zone 1, off Milestone Road towards the Bunker Road exit.
Yep.
It's close to our pipe.
You can refeed it
We
into
can
the system.
refeed it into the system. We wouldn't have to extend a lot of water main to get there. We're talking about 50 to 75 feet.
You already did the big loop
We
recently.
did the big loop, so it's a good place. It would help feed that side of the island. It would add maybe another 1,000,000 gallons a day to our permit. So if total build out was going on, we would have cushion. And it's redundancy if we ever had problems. Again, this summer, all of our pumps were on 24 hours a day.
All right. Mark, just while it's topical, can you
Yeah.
clarify, so the land swap with respect to pumping from this area increases our daily allowance because it's specific to the area where the pump is? Or is this part of the conservation land credit that
It would help
has
with-
DEP counts, or both?
It would help, it would be both. It would help with mitigation and locking up more land that's directly related to water. So we would get a mitigation piece that allows us to pump a little more. And putting in a new well, they qualify that as a new source. Every new source gets a permitted pumping number. So it would be in addition to our permit. A new source would be if we did the pump tests and all the hydro work and all the geophysics and determined that a safe yield for that well is 1,000,000 gallons a day, and the DEP agreed with it, they would add 1,000,000 gallons a day to our permit.
Okay, thank you.
So. And we have I put some numbers in the packet there from
Yep.
some estimates from some firms to take a peek at it. A lot of it is, as you well know, once you get at the state level, a lot of it is extensive testing and exploration that will require a lot of drilling of 2-inch wells and doing a lot of pump tests, looking for endangered species, the whole 9 yards, which all adds up.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yeah,
are
please,
we-
Matt, go ahead.
Are we,
Yep.
can I ask you a couple things? I gotta put my planning hat on,
Yeah,
and knowing too much hat, I have to ask some other questions. So, does the state allow us, or is it possible for us to get an average per day type of thing? In other words, the winter-summer thing is, it's just like the steamship. I mean, we're
Right.
completely tipped over on one end for 3 months, and then poof, see you later. When you say these numbers are based on the summer, I mean, max in the summer versus in the wintertime, we're probably, what do we pump in January?
so,
700,000 a day?
yeah, maybe 1 million
Yeah.
on a
Is
big
that, and
winter
these
day.
numbers include Sconset now, or no?
They're gonna include Sconset. I will say that,
Because that has to be a huge asterisk in how we've been dealing with Boston, or
Right.
the state, for
yes.
years.
The biggest issue with these numbers is the state is using 2010 census data to create these permits,
That's, yeah.
which is way off. We know it's way off. I've sent information from the group that captured a lot of population data using cell phone data,
Yeah.
and I gave them those numbers to revise their estimates. They're working, they understand the Cape and Islands is much different than
Yeah.
than
This
everywhere
isn't like
else.
North Andover.
So the math
doesn't
that they
change in
use,
the summer.
right, the math they use for North Andover or Lowell or
Yeah.
any normal non-touristy town is different. And they're trying to come up with a Cape and Islands number that would help the permitting process. Luckily, we've done a substantial amount and continue to do a substantial amount of groundwater investigation and geophysics to define our aquifer. If we hadn't done that, these numbers would be much, much lower because Nantucket is what they call an unassessed basin. So when the DEP looks at these pumping numbers, somewhere like the Ipswich basin has been studied, and their pumping numbers are way less because they don't have a lot of groundwater there, and it affects the Ipswich River. So when they pump, obviously the river starts to go dry and drops. So the state hasn't come out and assessed the Vineyard or Nantucket in most parts of the Cape. But we went ahead and spent money over the last 10 years to assess our own basin, have met with them, and showed that it was really an unbiased. We didn't make the numbers look any different than what they really are.
Can you just, well, you mentioned this, you brought this topic up when you visited the planning board, which I thought was
Yeah,
very
it
helpful.
was
for the
awesome.
Community overall, to
Yeah.
watch the tape. Just while you're on that topic, can you just give us the general water under the ground
Yeah.
scenarios? There's two different sources on
Yes.
a vertical level.
Yes.
Just touch base on that for general consumption.
Okay, so we have actually 3 levels of aquifers underneath us. The upper level, where most of the private wells are placed for residential use, I think one of the golf courses is in that too. I haven't talked to the Bartletts, I don't know the depth of their well. But that level goes down to about 80 feet, from ground surface to 80 feet. At that 80-foot depth, there is a confining unit that was probably from interglacial periods where silts were washed out. And when you drill through that unit, which is about 10 to 15 feet thick, you come into what we call the middle, or we used to call the lower, we now know it's the middle aquifer, where Wannacomet's wells are. That water is a great resource. It is recharged slowly through that confining unit above it, but there is a little bit of communication between the two. So it's not a mining operation. We're not pulling out. It is being replaced. We had that carbon tested and dated at Woods Hole Oceanographic. That water is 14,000 years old. So we're talking the Wisconsin glaciation. It's actually glacial water that we're pumping and selling. We drilled deeper through the bottom of that layer at about 280 feet. You run into a large lacustrine glacial lake deposit, which is solid clay, tighter than a Play-Doh material. That's about 100 feet thick. We ended up drilling through that, and we found another freshwater aquifer underneath that glacial lake deposit that's even older. And it is completely fresh. We have no pumps in it. We don't intend to pump it. It's there if we ever needed it. But that would be a mining operation. That is not recharged. Whatever we took out of that would not come back. Salt water, by all hydro rules, if you look at everything through geophysics, salt water is supposed to be located at about, for every 1 foot of elevation above seawater. So if we're at one elevation of 1 foot, you drill down 40 feet, you find salt water. They call it the 1 to 40 rule. So by all rights, we should have found at least brackish water at 200 feet. We found none, all the way down to, until we hit that clay layer, which at about 280, 300 feet, there's no salt water. And then we found no salt water through that clay layer. That doesn't mean that we can't get saltwater intrusion coming from the sides of the island and in. We will never see it upconing from below. Just the confining units stop that. We want to and we will continue with our normal budget, not a capital expense, but through our budget. We budget every year for the geophysics team from the USGS to come out and continue covering the island. We've covered our zone 2 pretty well. We got out into North Pasture in the west end, Nantucket side, last fall. And hopefully this spring, that team will be back and we'll continue to do that. Our goal is to map these layers across the whole island. It may require us to drill some holes, some deeper holes out in Nantucket, and determine in truth, ground truth, what the geophysics equipment is seeing. They did find some saltwater intrusion
Yes.
in the Nantucket end. And all of us that have worked or dug or
We knew that.
excavated out there would know that it is coming in. So that glacial lake deposit, what I talked about, that was like 100 feet thick, at some point between here, most of the scientists involved in this thing, some point between this side of the island and the west end of the island, that glacial lake deposit might end, which allows salt water to come up.
Is any of that, do you think, related to the fact that just the topography there, Nantucket relative to sea level, with so proliferation of wells, you're basically creating a lot of holes in there that
We are.
would tend to weep,
Yeah.
versus, for instance, Tom Nevers,
Yeah.
where it's just a completely different scenario.
Yeah.
So, to some extent, does that play into, or
It
is it
does.
also, or is it primarily just that the water source underneath the ground may taper off there, or maybe both?
It's a combination of both. And even if they find that glacial lake deposit continues through Nantucket, I think the way, just the density of Nantucket and the number of wells that used to be in Nantucket, we now water. We have a lot of customers in Nantucket now that are on town
That's
water.
my next question.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, is my own
And that helps.
my own edification on how
Yeah.
the science works.
Yeah.
But the bigger term picture is water to Nantucket
Yeah.
everywhere to prevent the use of wells
Right.
in order to preserve any weepage from that side of the island into
Right.
the overall source. Is there a concern of a threat of weepage if water is not provided to Nantucket? I'm not trying to sell water to Nantucket. I just want to
Already
understand
is.
what our out years are.
No, there isn't a concern that most of those wells in Nantucket are in that upper aquifer. So
Okay.
where we pump at that
80
150
feet.
to 100, yeah, they're above the 80.
Okay,
Most private wells are around that 50
Okay.
to 60.
Yeah.
okay.
That's a great water producing layer. I mean, if I was drilling a well and you saw that material, you would stop and put your pump there.
Yeah.
Since we have that confining unit at that 80, we're below that. If the salt water, however the salt water is coming into Nantucket, whether it's up or through the sides, I don't see that affecting our source here.
Yeah.
But, until we really define what's beneath Nantucket and other sections of the island, we've done very little work on the east side, Wisconsin.
There's
haven't
not
been
that
there.
much infill out there.
Right,
You don't even notice it.
right.
And Mark, where are we seeing the study work for that in your out years? Are we seeing it yet? Is it gonna be added?
I will be adding it to the website, and we will have copies of any reports. Most of it's been published in journals, but
The Nantucket area stuff?
it will be. They're
Okay.
still working on that. We just got an update on just last week, received the latest update on our 60-year pumping model. I can be sharing that with anybody. I just want to go through it one more time. Things look good. It shows no saltwater intrusion. It shows a slight increase in conductivity at the lower levels of the aquifer, which could be the water coming through different material, picking up, changing the water chemistry a little bit, or it could be, they don't think it's saltwater intrusion. Saltwater is more conductive.
So with-
But-
with respect to conductivity, that'd be like trace minerals or
Yeah.
metallic?
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking,
trace,
Minutia,
parts per
but-
trillion.
yeah,
So it's nothing that would, nowhere near brackish or nowhere near
right.
drinking water quality.
Sure.
I mean, it's parts per trillion. I think if I opened the window and sneezed into the atmosphere, it would be more than what we're talking.
Thanks.
But there was a change, and that is a continuous 60 years pumping at max capacity, nonstop, every day. What would happen?
So that pretends that winter, summer.
That pretends it went to summer year-round.
See, these are important. You say a lot of stuff that makes 10 questions, so I'm trying to
Yeah,
diffuse that a little bit.
Yeah. no,
Because
that's
I've
good.
already heard this, and this is the coolest thing in the world,
Yeah.
talking about this. Can I just ask
go
him,
ahead.
just a
I-
quick, so on Nantucket,
Mm-hmm.
Mark, that was like, what, 7 years ago?
yes.
Yeah. This is gonna sound stupid. Do we have a meter for Nantucket? I mean, do we know how many gallons we're
We
selling
don't.
out there now?
But I'm glad you brought that up
Because that's part of this other
It
state
is.
issue.
So,
We just suddenly made a new town with
Right.
town water. Poof,
did.
bye, have a good day. And it's like,
and,
you know,
and now with
not adding growth, we're
No.
adding
just adding,
hookups that already had water.
right. So
I mean, it's,
our plan is to add zone meters, they're called.
okay.
The state, in the beginning, weren't big fans of that. They wanted more of a per person gallons, you know, they weren't really concerned about areas. But the seasonality of
Yeah. Just
Nantucket
different answer.
or Cisco, now we have water going up to Cisco. There's another one where it's a completely seasonal part of the island. The goal will be to put a master meter before Fisher's Landing, maybe even before the landfill, in Nantucket
Okay.
Road.
Beautiful.
So it will meter everything. Everybody out there already has a meter, but then we would meter everything going
Know what's
to
going on out there.
the west end of the island.
I like it.
We'll have something on the Cisco side that meters everything going out to that Cisco area.
What are the size of those pipes? 8, 10, 12?
10 and 12.
And there'd be like a electromechanical, so you can do a read,
Yeah,
drive-by read?
so it would be just like our house meters now. It'd be something with a click of a button at our office. We could read it continuously at any point in time. And in the big scheme of things, I know it sounds expensive, but
No,
10 or 12
yeah.
grand for the meter, the information we would get from that is.
No, it's a pittance for what? And also perhaps helping us with getting the state to look at average use.
It would
versus-
really help us in the permitting process. If we went back to negotiate with them with an
Yes.
increase on the 1.9, we could show them, just like you said, look, this is a community that this time of year, look what's going
Villages
through
that
this
didn't
meter.
have
They
water.
didn't have water, and now
Yeah.
they do.
And Matt, if you don't mind, just one other, so with respect to those meters and the negotiation timeline and process, where are you anticipating putting procuring and installing these so that can be utilized in the current negotiation? Or it's
It
gonna
would
be
be-
something you revisit with them?
It would be a revisit with them where we're so far into this
Yeah, that's why I
that
was
they don't
curious.
wanna, no more add-ins. Every time we get a subdivision plan and I photocopy it and I scan it and I send it to them and say, rethink your numbers, we got another 100 going in. You know, rethink your numbers again, we got another 80 going in.
They're like, stop, Mark,
Wow.
stop.
And they're like, all right, we're going, they're going. So
Okay.
I brought a copy, the hard copy. I've asked GZA, who filled out this renewal permit for us, for an electronic copy. Unfortunately, I did not get that in time to get it to you guys, but the minute I get it emailed to me, I will get this out to you. And it kind of goes over the permitting and the renewal process and how they come up with the numbers of 1.9 and 1.68. Again, these aren't numbers we pick. The Commonwealth owns the resource, so they tell us what we can do.
Christie, and then I got one, and then we're gonna go back to Nick because we interrupted him.
No, sorry.
Mark, in any of the DEP numbers, does it include private systems? Like just a homeowners? So that's all unaccounted for?
Yes. That's just the public water supply, just Wanacom and Sconset. Well, Sconset's not in this number. You guys should know that the commission met this week, both commissions, and approved the merger that's been going through. So Wanacom is gonna take over Sconset, and it'll be one department, one commission, one budget, one capital plan,
2 different meter covers.
2 different meter covers.
Gotta have that, especially the
With the
formats.
goal of
Yeah.
eventually getting to, over some time, a 1 water rate for the island. The system of Sconset with only 800 customers, it can't sustain itself.
Yeah.
Without driving the rate to the point where it's gonna cost you $4 to
Yeah.
drink a glass of water, and that's
Yeah.
not fair to them.
It isn't, and that system out there before you even came here, it was funny. The outside spigots,
Yeah.
times 3 or something. It was
Yeah.
like this wild formula from horses. It's crazy.
So when we kinda took over managing Sconset, right away, the tank was condemned. I mean, the state inspector came over and said,
Yeah.
empty it.
Yeah.
They had no meters. Meters are required, so they've spent some serious money in Sconset.
Before, Matt, just
Yeah.
one quick thing, before we go on with, is that report, can we get a hard copy of that individually?
Yes,
Please
I
stop by.
can. This is the only one I have right now, but
No,
I can,
yeah.
I can have
Just
him.
at some point in the
we
near
can
future,
make,
we can come by.
I can make hard copies, and I can get digital copy out by email for everybody.
So if anyone's interested, just in a hard copy, just please let Mark know. Count me in for one.
Okay.
But, and I'll send you an email.
Yep.
But, Nat, sorry, go
So,
ahead.
just one thing that you said, I didn't even think of Cisco. That was more for fire protection at the time it was done.
It was.
And then all of a sudden, poof, you got water in Hummock Pond, and then that came up, and we're not pumping the pond anymore, and all of a sudden people need real water. It's sort of like Nantucket, but a different issue. So, my question is now, this is actually I think what you're kind of working towards is a reset for Nantucket with the
Yes.
state. Like you've got, so when you start talking about all this new growth, I know you're supposed to say it, but it sounds scary when you hear it.
Right.
It's not 80 lot subdivisions
No.
anymore. The 40B thing is really different from
Yep.
all that.
Yep.
1 lot subdivisions every month is probably 8,
Right.
10 a month.
Right.
But as far as how the state looks at us, and we got Nantucket, Cisco, technically Sconset wasn't part of the numbers at all, like sort of like
Right.
freewheeling in Sconset for
Right.
years.
Yep.
Oh my God, it's so unbelievable. So you gotta like hit the button. Like when is that gonna happen? How do you do this?
So what we do is in negotiations with them and talking with them, I'm trying to get them to come out.
Somebody's gotta come here with that has a lot of authority.
They don't understand. I try to explain to them Sconset, the east and west side, the villages on the east and west side, and they don't get it. They say, well,
Well, and you're talking.
Sconset. I'm like, no, you don't understand. In the wintertime, there's maybe 20
nobody out
occupied
there.
homes in
Yeah.
Sconset.
And you're talking to somebody in an office building somewhere.
That
next to
doesn't
a
know.
cubicle, and they
So
don't.
we've invited them down over and over to at least get an idea of what the island is, and to come down in the summertime.
Yeah.
Come out in February, see what we're dealing with. Then come out in August and see what we're dealing with.
Yep.
And I'll just drive them around, and say, all right, here it is in January. We won't see a person in Sconset, and maybe 2 in Nantucket.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back in the summer and do it again.
What do you think the reality is, though? Is anyone going to come down?
Yeah, I think
I think it would be
so.
great if they did.
No, I think they are, and I think we're not the only ones pushing issues and trying to reset stuff with them. The entire Cape
Same
is in
thing.
a similar situation, and so is the Vineyard.
Yeah.
I've talked with the guy in Tisbury.
But the vineyard, unlike us, likes to be 6 different places with 6 different.
Right. So we don't.
We
need
like to be one here.
Right.
Even though we have Sconset, it's not a town like.
As far as the water world goes, though,
Yeah.
I could argue the point that Nantucket is separate.
Another place.
Another part, even
Yeah.
though the pipe connects the two, that is really its own separate entity, different and behaves different water-wise than
Yeah.
the town of Nantucket.
I mean, if you ran water to Quidnet, all winter.
Yeah,
We'd be having the same discussion.
we would be.
It's just the water isn't bad out there like it was in Nantucket.
Right.
Tuckenuck's got better water than Nantucket,
Right.
which is kind of an interesting glacial thing. One more question, I'm all done. I really appreciate your efforts, Mark. Huge. When you talked about the land for the new pump
Yes.
stuff, because a lot of people don't understand this, and this is a really good conversation. Is this just to keep the towers full faster? Because we don't need another tower, right?
We won't need another tower. This is as similar to
To
a pressure
push it in
tank
quicker during the day
Push it in
before
quicker during
everybody
the
goes
day.
to sleep.
before, right, or at night when
Yeah.
everybody is sleeping. Fill them up so the morning rush,
Boom, you're full.
your pressure's there.
Yeah.
We've
Remember the
we-
conversation?
before we had that
Town
second
meeting.
tower,
Yeah.
things were scary. We would, first one in at 6 in the morning, it was either me or Mr. Gardner. You go turn on the SCADA screen and see where Washing Pond was at, because there is a point of no return.
Yeah.
When you drop below a certain elevation,
If
It's
it
not
isn't
coming
full in the morning, it can't get filled up in the day.
right,
That's
so, we've been working with National Grid to, do some off-peak pumping. They're helping us design maybe a different rate or a way where
Oh.
we can set up our SCADA system and set the
Yeah.
elevation, so we're pumping before the
Got it.
irrigation comes on early in the morning. And in between that time at 9 or 10 o'clock, when people are usually had their last shower of the day, or, water use tends to drop off after 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So if we can do most of our pumping and set our system up to pump and use power between that 9 and
Used
3
to
in the
do it with
morning.
electric water heaters in the 70s.
Yeah.
Those timers.
So
Hmm.
we're working on ways to better utilize the time
Yeah.
to fill those tanks. This pump, the new well would help fill those tanks and give us additional permitted pumping capacity. And that's not because of all the growth, even if we didn't have some of these subdivisions. Just the people that want water. I mean,
Yeah.
there's people off Appleton that have come in and they want water. There's Columbus Avenue wants water in Nantucket. There's all kinds of small pockets. Green Meadow over off of Surfside, their association wants water.
That is a weird deal there.
So they're
It should have
stuck in
been
the
done
middle
in
of
1984.
everything.
Crazy.
So
Yeah.
even not worrying about this list, I could probably produce these same type of units
With just existing.
with just existing that want water.
And you're gonna have 3M. You already got one road now.
Right.
Just got done.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time. So
Christie?
Mark, what's after, so, say we approve this year, what's the, snapshot for the next 3 years? I mean, is this phased? Is there, what are we looking at for costs any thoughts on that?
So the overall cost for the new well, or everything that we
For,
need to do?
for everything to complete the
Okay.
project?
It would probably be, the 1.5 would get us real close to finalizing the well itself. And then there would be, maybe in 2 or 3 years, a capital project for the pump station building itself that would be around the well, that would hold the control system. The last one we did at North Pasture, we were lucky. We put well, not lucky, we did it on purpose. We built the water tower there so we could put the pump station inside.
right. Yeah.
With this, it would have to be a standalone
Like the
building.
State Forest one.
Like the state forest, like the
Yeah.
ones you see in Wisconsin in the back field.
Yeah.
We would need a building to hold the controls. And that
Like
would
a
be-
concrete module type thing.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
So would this new station, would that be, would you use that in tandem, or would it be sort of as backup?
It would be its own individual, and it would be pumping. I would like to, the 2 wells that we have in the upper aquifer right now, we have 3 that are in the deep, 2 that are in that upper 80 feet. I would like to make those permanent backup, emergency only pumps. So with the addition of this one, we wouldn't have to pump from the upper aquifer, which I'm not saying it's dangerous or bad to pump from that aquifer, but it holds the most risk for us. Any superficial contamination or anything that goes on will be in that upper
Yeah.
aquifer. So this would be another one that's in the deep that is safe. And that would allow us to keep those two for emergency purposes. If one were to go down in the summer, we would have the two
Gotcha.
shallow wells to kick on.
All right.
So this one would be a full-time use. It would run. It would be in tandem with the other deep wells.
Got it.
Great. Other questions?
So how much do you think you need in, say, fiscal year '22 or whatever for the pump
There
station?
would probably be, when I looked at the Sconset numbers, the Sconset pump station was the last one we did. And with all electronics and construction and framing, everything was a little under $1 million.
When was that?
That was done 4 years ago, 3 years ago. So
Double it.
the prices are gonna be higher. Well, I mean,
Depends on the economy.
depends on the economy, but
Yep.
right now, you're right, the construction prices, I don't know what they are per foot, but it doesn't need to be a big building. You could probably do like a 15 by 15. It can almost be a large shed.
I've got some questions if
Yep.
no one's done. So, Mark, I'm just gonna kind of give you a bunch,
Mm-hmm.
one at a time, and if it's just as short as you want is fine.
Yep.
Background, experience with the vendor who's doing the study work, pretty lengthy, they're new to us, they've been doing this for a zillion years.
He's been doing this for a zillion years. He's actually been coming here to Nantucket his whole life. His parents came here and have been coming here. He's very familiar with the island. They do a lot of work with Haley and Ward, who we use solely until this project. They recommended, with the complexity of our aquifer and what we're dealing with, these guys really specialize in groundwater. That's all they do. They don't do roads and pipe projects and normal civil engineering. All they do is groundwater.
Great, so they're a lot of experience, local knowledge,
Yeah.
and very, kind of a niche vendor.
Yeah.
Number two, just what was our max daily this summer and how frequent?
I think we maxed out at 4.3 million
A day?
in one day.
Really?
And
But this goes to your annual
So-
thing.
Half times that?
Oh, you're including Sconset and Nantucket in that number?
yeah, so this summer.
No, because I'm looking at
Yeah.
the
Yep.
state thing
Yeah.
you've got here.
So
Sorry.
that's the daily average. They give us a max day
Yeah.
from each source.
Oh.
And our max day that we pumped was in August, early August, and it was 4.3. We only went over 4 million, I think, under 10 times. Maybe it was 7 or 8 times we went over 4 million gallons a day. Last summer, we did more than that.
Does that make you nervous when you get like? Does
Well,
4 million make you? Is everybody on
It-
pins and
it-
needles, or is it?
No, it's
Red
not
line.
pins and needles, Jason, but what it is our equipment that we have. Like I've said many times, it's not about the resource. We have the water, it's the mechanics to get it out. I think if we maxed, and no one ever wants to run your equipment at max, but if we pegged every pump and pegged every control, we could probably get 4.8, close to 5 million a day with the existing equipment.
So this new source takes the future development in mind, and then it will be,
It would alleviate stressing, putting your,
Yeah.
the pedal to the floor on all the other ones.
It's just like the cable conversation.
Yeah.
right.
Same thing.
Well, if we pull 4.3 on the busiest day in August, all these developments come online, you're gonna be looking at substantially more on our highest high day. So this new source would allow us to, meet that, but at the same time, it would be a general, just as you said, take the stress off.
It would take the
system.
stress off. And what it will do is, this daily average on the sheet that I gave you from the state, a lot of these developments that we're talking about will be year-round. So right now, there are currently customers that will move from that garage apartment into that new condo or new individual home. But for the new ones, our daily average is gonna increase because our winter numbers, if new people come, will increase.
Okay. Peter, did you?
Yeah, is there a state mandated daily maximum, like a 1 day can't pump more than X amount, or do they just
There
say
is, it's close to 5 million.
it's close to 5?
Yes.
So we hit
If they do-
4.3, which is
The
more
way-
than 80% of our daily
yeah.
capacity based on
Oh,
our
yeah,
systems.
Yes.
And the
So
state's mandated daily is about the same.
It
5
is.
million?
So what they do is for each source, each well you have, they give it a maximum daily pump.
And you
And most of
aggregate all
those are
that.
at 1.4 million. In the summertime, we're running each of those deep wells at about 1 to 1.1 million a day. So we're a few 100,000 away from the daily max.
Hitting about 80%.
80,
at the-
85%.
80, 85, right. Interesting.
Okay, great.
Getting
Richard?
close.
Can we just review the timeline for the new well? First thing you have to do is the land swap.
The land swap with the land bank.
Okay, and then you've got $1.5 million
We would
requested to do the study.
It would be, that would take us all the way through, the 1.5 would get us through the initial study to start the new source approval with the state. We'd have to drill some wells, do some investigation, do some sampling,
Okay.
do some groundwater contouring and mapping. That would also include drilling the production well. We would drill the real well if all looked good and everything was good. We would install.
That's all in the 1.5.
All in the 1.5. We would drill the well and then conduct what they call a 7-day pump test, where we'd run it at max capacity for 7 days, study it, see what it does. And then in 2022 or 23, whenever we get to that point, depending on how fast it's reviewed at the state level, I would have to come back and talk about the $1 million or whatever construction costs for the building.
Okay. Other, okay, so I'm gonna follow up then. So I'd just like you to kind of clarify 2 items, confirm or correct. So by source, you're just, really what we're saying to the layman is, it's another tap.
It's another tap into the aquifer.
And then the tap is, we're looking at the anticipated depth is the 80-foot,
No,
Or the-
we'd go 150 to 180.
150 to, okay.
You're gonna get that prehistoric water.
Yeah.
That's the middle
The middle.
aquifer, right?
Yeah.
And nothing's coming out of the deepest.
No.
Okay, because you referred to deep a couple times, and I didn't
Yeah.
know if you meant
Yeah.
the middle or the deep.
Untouched.
Untouched.
Virgin
Yeah,
water,
no,
okay.
not touching that.
4 is, how receptive is Mass DEP to the updated census and other,
They're reviewing all that data now.
okay, so they
They
are.
did accept it. They're not trying to argue it. They know the big push from the Cape and Islands to change the way they look at our type of community.
Okay, and then the 5th is, with respect to conservation land, can you just clarify, I know we talked about with respect to this particular pump, but how does the credit, not in great, I don't need to know percentages, but just generally explain to us what the credit is for land held in conservation as it affects the max gallons per day?
Yep. So if we take a look at
And I'm sorry, and your efforts going forward
Yep.
on that?
Yep, so what we've done is we've gone through the GIS system at our office and have looked up every piece of land owned by a conservation
Yeah.
entity in the Zone 2. We have to talk only in Zone 2, or the lip-shaped Zone 2 that we have. And we came up with acreage, I forget the exact acreage of that property that's protected and locked up. We submitted that to them, so for every acre, they will give us so many gallons added to our permit. I think with the acreage we gave them, they were talking about 900,000 gallon addition, 8 to 900,000 gallon addition to our permit. And that's reflected in the 1.9.
And you're in the process of developing that into an actual.
And I've actually had communications with them to determine, try to get them to determine that the island itself, being a sole source aquifer, that our line on the map, the Zone 2, we should be able to extend
Yeah.
past that. If land is locked up in the middle moors, that should count. It's a sole source aquifer underneath a relatively small land surface. So even though under maximum conditions of pumping, we're not gonna draw water from the middle moors because it's outside our Zone 2 of influence, but it's protected.
There's nobody building
There's
there.
nobody building there, and it is locked up, and it's never gonna be built.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get, and they're open to all
This
of
is this is another whole
Yeah.
discussion. I like this. You tell them my little thing I wrote in the paper, we're about 1.75% ground cover in Nantucket.
Right.
It
We should
looks
be
like we're
rewarded for that.
building crazy, but we really
Right.
are more open
Right.
space than what
Yeah,
is on paper.
and I
Big zoning,
try to convince them that,
you know.
not that we want a pat on the back, but we've done pretty well
Yeah.
about keeping open space, and the town should be rewarded for that, and that
Yeah.
reward could be
More capacity.
use what we've done, and
The whole island's a recharge.
the whole island's a recharge for our aquifer, and they can't argue that. A drop of water, if it falls outside that zone 2 line,
Right.
from me to Nat, it's the
Trickling
same
into the-
hole underneath us. It all counts.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. So with respect to the conservation land and the
Yep.
credit
I
there,
like this
it's
idea.
safe to
This is good.
presume that there's going to be some additional credit, you think?
I hope so, yes.
And it may be that it works out in this negotiation for the permit or the discussion for the permit.
Yes.
It's a certain amount, but as the topic is kind of broadened out and matured, for the next time you
It
go
would
around,
be-
we may get even more.
So when they finish their review of this, and they give us our numbers, which is gonna be the 1.9, we have that 5-year period from 2021 to 2026. Every 5 years, we can go back to them with new data and say, look, that number you have for 2026, we don't agree with it. Here's our information and science behind it. Can we change that number? So every 5 years, we can renegotiate. Unless we have a substantial amount of data, we can go to them and say, after 2 or 3 years, and negotiate.
Okay. And then last
Love it.
question for me on this is, and I don't want to get into out years, but I want to bring it up because it's topical. I'd like to flag this as an outstanding item, Rebecca. Is the pump house, and that you would put it in, if I heard you correctly, it would be FY '22, and I would suggest based upon the Sconset number, to carry a $1 million placeholder, subject to any discussions with town manager and finance. But it seems to me like that's the realistic number. If the economy, if there's correction or not, at least it's a baseline based
Yeah.
on a known fact.
Yeah.
And the more important thing, I think, for us is that it's in the SIP.
I will get it. I will get it.
That'd be great. Okay, great. If there's no other questions on this, I'd like to move on to the water main replacement, which I think is a lot less sexy discussion, but nonetheless important. And then we've got to hit the out years.
Yep. So the Sconset water main
I
replacement.
didn't
Yeah.
bring my glasses again.
So this is, this comes from a lot of work between Comet and the sewer department. David and I meet on a weekly basis. We did come up with our 10-year capital plan that I think you guys have copies or have seen before, where we outlined the areas we needed to go, both in town and in Sconset. Now David, with moving forward, investigating all of his sewer issues, and now that they have the camera truck,
Camera truck, yeah. Dairy
Comet has agreed to work with David on all projects together. So he listed these areas of concern in Sconset where he may be doing sewer work. We also need water main work in those areas, so we're gonna follow him. And until all of his really critical areas, like he's finding stuff with the camera that I'm sure you guys will hear about, that, his list has changed. He copied us, so we were the first ones to do the 10-year capital plan. He was following us, and we were gonna go to North Liberty, and then we were gonna go to Cliff, and then,
Yeah.
well, now, after what happened, over the last winter, and now with the camera truck, they're doing more research into the sewer mains and finding other areas that may need to go first. So we're in agreement with him that, David, if you have pipe that's just disintegrated in certain areas, obviously, you need to go there first. We'll follow you. If you need to go to this section, Codfish Park and Front Street and Maury, if that's really critical in Sconset, then even though we have that out 6 years from now, that's crazy for him to go rip it up, pave it, and then me 3 years later go in and rip it up and pave it.
Yeah. No
So we'll
further
just
issues.
move our stuff around to follow him.
Okay.
And that's all that one is.
I mean, that's the way I think we all agree
Yeah.
the planning should happen. If we're gonna open the road, open it. and-
We want to do, the plans are almost finished for North Liberty Street area. Hopefully this winter, we'll be going on that. That'll be another project, just like it was on Little Farmer Street. That was a first combined project we did with sewer. It went fairly well, and it saves the town. It saves the town in the long run. I know the capital numbers are gonna look, when you add ours and David's together, they're gonna look overall bigger, but
It's
getting
cheaper.
it all
Yeah, it's
done, it's getting it all
way
done
better.
at
Less than
once,
doing it
one
separately.
contractor,
All in
one
favor, say aye.
mobilization,
Yeah.
one engineer.
Yeah, right.
And one road done.
Yeah.
And we can do sections of town and be done, like the whole North Liberty Street,
Paved
Darrymore
plans.
area will be done, and we won't have to touch it for hopefully decades.
That brings up, an interesting question. How are you guys partitioning or carrying the, what would otherwise be a duplication of,
Right, so what we
cost
do
for-
is we ask the engineers to break out cost estimates for laying water main
Yeah.
and laying sewer main, and we get a per foot price based on material. And, you know, obviously sewer's a little different, you have to pitch it if it's gravity, they gotta get elevation, it's more
Critical.
complicated project. So it's usually more expensive than water main installation because it's under pressure. It can be up, down, it can change.
Sure.
We can go different directions. So Comet's end is always gonna be on the shorter side of that overall budget number for that project. And it's just off of per foot price.
and then what about the duplication for excavation and backfill type stuff?
That is just a benefit to everybody.
No, I mean, in terms of
50-50?
carrying the
Yeah,
cost.
40-60.
Carrying the cost, so it'll break the project up into per foot.
Yeah.
Excavation, pipe, everything's in that per foot cost.
Right, but what I'm saying is if you've got a per foot that's
Yep.
soup to nuts, and David has a per foot that's soup to nuts, there's a duplication of.
There is of excavation, but
Excavation
in
backfill.
that per foot price, that excavation number's already been worked out, and the paving number's already been worked out.
Okay, so you're doing it
Yes.
in the, origin number versus
Right.
after the fact of the
It's,
adjustment?
it's in before
Okay.
the final number for the per foot is kicked out, so
Okay.
everything that is duplicated, they're digging for
You're
us.
discounted,
We're discounted at the end when we get that per foot price, all of that duplication is in that number.
okay,
So it's actually, when you look at that number at the end, when we do all the math and figure out the deductions for the duplication,
Yep.
it's a cheaper number than it would be for me individually.
separate
just to
Oh, yeah.
lay
bids.
Yeah.
water.
Completely.
yeah,
So you're gonna get one contractor
Yes,
with a ratio
yeah,
separation of
Yeah.
each thing doing it at the same time.
yeah,
I love this. It's
Yeah,
taken
it's
until
great.
2018 to figure this out.
Yeah.
Incredible.
big,
Just curious, Mark, if David's doing something somewhere and you're doing something in another location, is your per foot cost the same? Or is there,
No,
are
there
they
will be-
different?
Their pipe's
It
more.
is less if we go together. My
No,
per-
what I mean is, like, what is normally your per foot cost on doing
225,
business on,
yeah.
and is David's the same? If he's doing a separate project?
No,
Okay.
this is different.
It's higher?
This is
Yeah.
much higher, sewer is much higher per foot than.
They got
than
catch
water.
basin things, they got pump
Elevations.
station stuff,
I
all
can't remember what he said, but
gobbledygook.
it's significantly higher.
Yeah, okay.
So water usually ranges from, depending on economy and stuff, we usually go from like the 175 to 210 per foot. And I think David starts on his cheap end at like the 250
Yeah.
or 240, somewhere
Got
in
it.
there.
Okay.
So his can get complicated when you
Right,
have
throw
to
a
do
pump
lift
station in
stations
and all of a sudden you have
and other equipment.
a whole bunch more. Okay,
But
great.
even him working with us and adding Comet into the project, his per foot number drops as well. The mobilization cost, that you guys all know,
Oh,
this
yeah,
project,
yep.
they
Bingo.
get 40 or 50 grand just to get the stuff
Yeah,
over here.
yeah.
Yeah,
So if it's only one guy instead of two guys, I mean, right off the top, you're saving 50 grand.
Richard?
Just a quick question, the Haley and Ward estimate
Yep.
for Prospect Street from
Yep.
2016, what number does that tie back to on the SIP form?
That number, so Prospect Street came out to like 220, I think, a square foot in that ballpark. And that was our latest project, so that's,
So it's just informational on,
it is. So
Okay.
we're basing it
Okay.
off that number.
okay.
It's always a little bit of a gamble to guess. I don't, people being so busy, contractors are throwing out numbers now that they're not real. I mean, it's not a great time to be planning massive projects because everybody is so
Yeah.
busy. So they're giving numbers that are much higher.
Well, correct me, but I thought I saw in here we had one bid that was in the $1 million range and one in the $8 million range
Yeah.
for the same scope of work. So it just makes your point.
Yeah.
The hour.
Yeah, we have two contractors are already here now.
Right.
And they
So-
basically are kind of
And,
staying.
and
so-
both, David and I have both worked with CC and Robert Auer.
Yeah.
They know the island,
Yeah.
and they are both gonna be bidding on these projects, and they are here, and I don't think either one of them intends to go anywhere.
They're not going
soon.
anywhere.
So if Robert Viera pulls in an 8.38 on a 1.1 job, then,
Yeah,
not that they will,
No.
but, I mean.
but at that point in time, they were probably so busy that
Yeah,
they
just
wanted
threw
to
a
bid
number
it.
at the wall.
They wanted to throw a number out to be respectful,
Yeah.
you know?
To have
We
been in
ask
the
people
queue.
to bid and they don't wanna, they
Yeah.
wanna be on our good side, yeah, we'll throw you a bid, but it's really an exercise for their estimator to go through and practice and get good. And then if they do bid, they can ask for the bid documents, so they probably bid that, threw that number in, not ever intending to get the job.
Right.
But now we have to send them all the other breakdown
They
from
just
all
do
the other
like
bids.
a reverse audit on
So
it.
they're looking at their competitors now, right?
Yeah.
So they'll
Yeah.
get all that information, that's all that bid was about.
Interesting. That's new information for me. Thank you. That's good. Other thoughts, Richard?
Just one last question, sorry to be
No,
extending.
please,
it.
this is good stuff.
For the new developments, for lack of a better term, where does the money come for the infrastructure, for the water mains, for all those new areas like Richmond, like Tacoma,
They do it.
Green?
They do it. So right now, CC Construction is the contractor at the Richmond Group.
Yep.
They have laid they're starting to lay the water main and portions of the sewer main in that development.
Okay, so Waite Drive, would that be the town has to,
That would be, we would do that, we would pay for that.
and is there money somewhere in the budget? for
We
that?
do have, I have a capital project from 2 years previous with leftover money saved aside for that.
Okay.
So that money we already do have for that project.
What's your time frame on Waite Drive, just out of curiosity?
We're waiting until someone gives us the go-ahead. I don't even know where that project
Still
I think
stands.
that's still in the,
Appealing.
somewhat of the incubator, but coming out, but I don't think it's there yet.
We have
It's
it
involved
already-
in an appeal process.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
now, in
We-
the courts.
We have it surveyed, we have it drawn, we have the money, we have it ready to go. I think David does as well for the sewer. Now it's just a matter of when someone tells us we can go, we will. And that would be a similar thing, we'd have to get an outside contractor, but we would be paying that contractor.
Other questions on that? So I think I just want to segue, I'll use that to segue into out years. There's, out years, we've covered the pump house.
Yep.
And with respect to the water main replacement, I think what we'd like to do is, and this is more for our capital project status update, would be consider these outstanding items, which would be, if you could get us a list of the FY17 and FY18 actual water main replacements versus proposed.
Yep,
No, it's not a gotcha thing, it's just so we have an understanding of what, and then if we have questions, we can ask what was different.
yep,
Which will educate us, and then include FY19 to the extent you think any updates are
Yep.
anticipated.
okay,
And won't be doing that until early November, but we'll have it on a list at the finance department to forward to you at some point.
okay. That's easy enough. I do have, and I don't know if it's even possible, but I know like we want to list the streets for out years where we're gonna go. So, and we're doing this a year or two in advance. So if
You need
So
placeholders.
I put, Orange Street or Lily Street, and then David finds out,
Yeah,
oh man,
Switch them.
Holbert Avenue is really, really bad, I gotta do that.
this is a
Capital
good,
gets approved now for 2 years from now. If it's defined as Cliff Road, how do I get that Cliff Road money to Holbert Avenue?
Well, I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting point,
That's
but I think
better.
the way,
Placeholder.
and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is how we're handling it with respect to the capital appropriation is it's not a specific street being listed, it is the scope of work, is a general
Oh,
matter.
I was told I had to put not only street, but feet of
Well,
street.
But, okay, so this is, and I think the differentiation, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is with respect to the internal process, having that information is both, relevant and important for future planning for you and David.
Yeah,
Because it sends up a flare. We're gonna be here, here, and here this year. with respect to what goes to town meeting, I don't recall seeing streets listed. And I think that that's, the difference in that is that if that level of specificity is included in the article, in the appropriation, your hands are tied. However, if you're talking about water main replacement and the same scope of work, then there's some flexibility subject to going through the finance department to the extent you need to. And is there any other requirement there? So generally I hit it? Okay. So the street list and the fee is internal, and then the appropriation, so you do have some flexibility if you guys need to jive and juke a little bit, because David, with the
Well,
cameras,
that's
found
just-
some terrible
The
situations.
last time we talked on Monday, that we both discussed that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if we're listing out where we're going, but then something comes up where he finds an area of critical need, then if we need to change that.
Yeah,
it would
so-
just be, it'd be nice if we could do that.
Yeah, so I mean, just to be super clear, the internal aspect is for a sense of, as you know, and you're doing better planning, forecasting, and accountability. And then from that basis, it goes as a more broader funding appropriation, so that if there is a necessity to be reacting on the ground in a given fiscal year, you guys have that capacity. And that's where our follow-up is important with respect to the list I asked
Yep.
for,
Yep.
because then we can see where you had to make changes and why, and have a discussion.
Okay.
And it helps close that loop. Does that,
No, that makes sense, yeah.
okay, good.
Just ask
Thoughts?
Brian,
Richard, yeah.
can we just ask Brian something? 'Cause
Yeah,
he's
please.
hanging out here. This is huge, Brian. I mean, what's going on here? How can you make this? There's got to be a way to make this work, to save these millions, because this is going to be forever now. This is sort of like the sidewalks or like the phase 2 of the II stuff
Right.
that your dad started. Like, that's not finished yet. It's got to be water main stuff mixed in to the remaining II, or what we already did, unfortunately.
Right.
So how do we juggle this around and make this so smooth? I guarantee you've got the answer to that, Brian. 'Cause you're the guy.
I think you did it.
He's already doing it.
Our job's easy, we just have to put the pipe in.
You got to
He has
make
to
it
figure out how
work
to pay
with
for
that
it.
guy to make this come out right.
Brian, may I segue that? So I think what you've done, the way town manager and finance have set this up, is that by appropriating the funds for a specific scope of work, but not a specific location, their hands are open in the department that, in the enterprise fund, and so that they can do that work, the way you're talking about.
Yeah.
So they've already done it.
Okay.
So there's flexibility there, and then it's just a matter of water companies and sewer coming to us and saying, this is the list of the work we want to do, and this is the list of the work we did last time, so you know it's all credible and viable. So I don't know that there's a change to be made. They can do it the way they're doing it now. Is that?
I'm just a simple guy seeing problems that could happen with a great plan.
Yeah.
Good. We can't let the government
I think
screw it
generally
up.
overall that's what we're doing. I mean, when you talk about the sewer department has 2 CMOM articles right now, and we'll probably be adding the third because it's multi-phase. With that, which is the pipe cleaning and inspection, we put a bid out every year. We're going to be getting ready to put another one out. Excuse me. I don't know if water was included, but I can tell you that storm drain, the storm system is also, they piggyback on it because the DPW director has substantial amount of money to work on stormwater.
Yep.
So they've been added. Certainly we could, if Mark wants to have the water mains, the water lines camera during whatever sections we're doing for in phase 2 of CMOM, we can certainly add it on, because we just get a price per foot to do that, so we can allocate cost for water mains, sewer, stormwater, whatever. In terms of the other piece of them working together, I mean, the water company has historically, since I've been here, which is going on, I'm in my almost 6 years now, has always internally identified the streets that they would like to do with the funding that they're asking for. Town meeting, we have always been much a broader article that just says water main replacement, to give them the flexibility to move as long as they stay within that allowance. Sewer, we're trying to do that, but we also have to remember that some of the sewer is eligible for SRF funding, and it has
Yeah.
to be written in a more, I guess the word to use, I guess right now is confining or restrictive way because of the eligibility for funding for some of that. However, when we're not sure that, or we're doing specific or non-specific to that like type of work like CMOM, it is written in a way that gives us flexibility to be able to tack if we have to into a different area if we find a problem. So to the extent we can, we do. But we also want to make it so that the voters understand exactly what we're trying to do with the money at the same time, so that they're supportive, and generally they have been. So does that answer your question,
Yeah,
Matt?
I mean,
hope?
I just see such a great congeniality thing here. This is like going up on the roof, doing the roof, but we didn't do the leads in the chimney because it wasn't in the bid, but the leads got holes in them. I mean,
No,
this is great if we can
believe me,
figure out how to do it.
internally, we're always talking to the water company, to the sewer, to DPW with stormwater to try and find a way to make sure that all of these different articles can all be leveraged in the areas so that they can work collectively to get things done in the way that they are certainly doing now.
Thank you. Is that?
Yeah, it's great. Beautiful.
Mark, I don't see any numbers for tank maintenance in the out years. Is that now in your operating budget, or?
It is,
Oh, okay,
it is.
cool.
Once we get, if the weather maintains, the tanks will be hopefully early November. The guys will be out touching up the tanks, and then we're just gonna try to keep it every couple of 3 years, just get them back and touch up what we can.
It's just not practical to have them here on a hot sunny day in July.
The material they use, the climate has to be just right.
So November's
Any
actually more
moisture
time.
at all really messes it up, so.
Well, that's what I was wondering about in the off. I mean, I understand the practical realities.
Yeah.
Like having people here when it's
Yeah,
typical painting weather is
Yeah.
not practical.
right.
But November still is a good window for them.
It is, that's what they're shooting for, late October, early November.
Because these are heavy-duty chemical bonding agents.
They
so It's
are.
not like a latex paint you see on the
No.
outside, or an oil-based
No,
paint you see on the
it
outside.
needs
of
the
your house.
right temperatures, right humidity, right everything.
Huh.
And that helps with the longevity of the product.
And what's the temperature of the water coming out of the ground? 52 degrees or
52
something?
to 53,
So that's always going to be a factor
Yeah.
too.
yeah,
I mean, you got a tank that's at least
Right.
half full, or right?
yeah. So what they try to do is match outside temperatures to water temperatures of the tank
Mhm.
to have less condensation.
Yeah, because you had a condensation point behind the film
Right.
otherwise.
So if they were, like, even today, it was a little warm in the last, a couple days ago was a little warm, there's still a lot of condensation on the tanks.
Yeah.
They're trying to get that exact, and it's not a big window, I mean, it's
No,
a tight window. but
it's a
they're
tight
trying to-
window inside a tight window.
They're trying to find that window.
Interesting. Peter, did you have something?
I'm good.
Okay, great. So just still on out years, I guess, if you could speak briefly on where you guys are with your rate study, looking at that along the lines of the capital, from capital perspective, how that works with using retained earnings as capital to some extent, much as you've brought in the tank maintenance.
Yep.
How that kind of factors into what the the user rate is, and then also just a tail on that will be, I got a question for you about expansion and betterment fee. So just the rate study, and where are you guys with that, and are you looking at leveraging some of those towards capital expenditure?
Yeah, so we're about, I would say 75% done with the rate study. I would like to thank Brian and his department every time either I or Heidi request information for the rate guys that are doing the work from Brian, so they get us the information right away. They're working on that now. We're getting pretty close towards the end of the information gathering. And I think it's gonna be done soon. In that, they've factored in a reserve fund, which we're calling it, which actually ended up being retained earnings. Instead of retained earnings at the end, we're gonna have a line in the budget that is called reserve fund. And there's factors that are put out by American Water Works and New England Water Works that tell you, a water company should have X amount based on what equipment you have. And we wanna try to have that number. The last weekend in August, we had a major scare in Sconset. There was a big-time issue. I came in on a Sunday morning, and there was 3 feet of water in the Sconset tank. The SCADA system alarms did not call any of us. The whole motor control center was down. Luckily, it ended up being about $700 in small components, but when that first happened, I thought that was gonna be $1 million Saturday. So when we talk about that reserve and being built into the whole rate, that reserve needs to be substantial. When you talk about 5 or 6 or 7 pumping stations with motor controls and SCADA operated and controlled systems, any lightning storm, anything like that, we could lose 2 or 3 at a time. So it will be there, but also the commission is more open to using some of that reserve fund towards capital projects and doing things like tank maintenance instead of going and get capital funding for that, work that into our operation budget. And we'll be doing that. And I'm hoping to get to the point where the USGS and the geophysical surveys that we're doing to map the island we're making that part of the budget as well. We want to add to our budget and when we can use that reserve fund towards any capital that's possible. But I know the commission strongly feels that needs to be a set amount in there. That amount hasn't been determined yet. The ballpark figures are maybe 3 to 4 million.
But as you said, it's an industry standard index to your
It
equipment
is.
inventory.
It is.
So that's, I mean, an important factor right
Yeah,
there.
and with those indexes, is when you use the American Waterworks stuff, it looks like that $3 to $4, $5 million range. There are some that tell you need 20, 15 million.
Right.
That's just, I wouldn't want to propose that kind of rate to reach that number. I'm comfortable with that $3 to $4, $5 million range instead of that 10 to 15 that some towns and water companies do have. But they're close with the rate study. They're actually pretty impressed that we're able to operate at this rate. We're in the bottom third of rates.
Yeah, it's just like our taxes. It's onion rings here.
We
It's
operate
different.
in the most expensive community in the
Yeah.
Commonwealth, but we have the third lowest. We're in the bottom third of water rates.
I
Just
love this.
before you jump in, Nat, Mark, when are you thinking the rate study will be completed?
I would hope within a month.
Okay.
It's a month and a half.
So before the end of the year?
I would definitely before the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Nat, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, Mac, you say too much and not enough, and it's awesome. You're answering questions that I try to give answers unprofessionally all day. Okay, why is it cheap? Because it was already here
Right.
100 years ago for free. We're not the Cape. Cape has nothing.
They got nothing.
They're digging everything fresh
Yeah.
in 2018. It's not the same thing.
No.
We're better off having all these repairs than we are having nothing in the ground.
Exactly.
I want to ask you something about this skeeter thing or whatever you just said. Do you see in your out years or thoughts as far as we got a lot of stuff out there like that thing out at State Forest?
Yep.
I mean, I've been out to that thing
Yep.
and it's like, ooh.
Yep.
It's like I'm thinking about, it's sort of like a railroad terminal where all the tracks are changing and stuff. Does there need to be a live person, kind of like, I don't want to say living out there, but like making rounds
We do every daily.
at night? No, I'm talking about at night.
No, we don't go.
I'm
at
just
night.
asking.
Yeah, no.
Camera, like way to know what's going on, like 3 feet of water. How did that happen?
Well, the SCADA system has an alarm that's supposed to call me and 4 other guys that work there when that happens. And for whatever reason, that alarm
Yeah.
failed. Literally, we were 3 feet away from
Zero.
zero. Only pressure would be pump pressure.
Yeah.
And the SCADA guy, the Harbor Controls is the name of the company we use to run our SCADA. He can't explain why that did not work. It's been tested and tested. We test it once a month. We get phone calls.
Yep.
It's just an automatic test of the system, like the emergency broadcast system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it worked a few weeks before that. So I don't know, I think the electricians think that it was something to do with the way the fuses blew in a certain series in a certain order. The components that were used to make those calls to say there were problems was damaged. I told them we need to find a way around all that so it's not relying on those components. There's got to be a way, even if it's adding an additional sensor in the tank that's standalone from everything else.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was
The
gonna
level
ask.
gets to
Are you
this.
Separate from
considering a
that.
redundant
Yeah.
system?
Yeah.
It's a separate
I
system.
want a total separate system that's not controlled by, even if it just does elevation in the tank.
Yeah.
If it gets below
A
this,
float.
call us. I don't care
Something
if the
simple.
pump station's on fire or not.
Yeah.
If the water level in the tank is here, just call. One measurement, elevation,
Yeah.
that's it.
So you're on it.
Yeah.
That's important. Okay, good. Other thoughts, questions?
No, this
I have
is
one
awesome.
more.
I love it.
So, Mark, you mentioned you're getting requests for people to have expansion of
Yeah.
having water service brought to them, which, completely understand the need and the desire. But I'm just kind of curious, I'm not familiar with it. I know with the sewer, we have we have like a betterment fee which covers past capital expenditures.
Right.
Are you guys, do you charge, what's your rate fee for the capital expenditure that's related to that on the public side of the water line? And I presume that the private side is all the
Yep.
individual.
So when the last project we did like that, Nantucket, Comet obviously fronts the money for the project. We get the capital, we go put it in. We take 70% of that number and we divide it by how many connections there are, and that is your connection fee. So if there's, 100 connections, you divide the $50,000 by 100 and everybody's gonna pay that much. That's your connection fee. That's why in town is a $5,000 connection fee. Nantucket, there's a $5,700 connection fee. It's that extra $700 that's making up that difference.
And there was some funding for that too.
Yeah,
So,
and
right.
we would continue to do that when
Okay,
we
I was
move
just
into those areas.
Curious what the numbers
Yeah.
were on that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any other questions for Mark on out years or thoughts? No? Great. Well, look, we really appreciate you coming in.
Actually, I have
Christie?
one. When Peter and I met with you,
Yep.
you had spoke about the possible setting up a lab local.
Yeah, so the
Oh,
town,
yeah,
the
that's right.
town has an opportunity. I guess there's a private donor that wants to throw in some money towards a laboratory. Now that we have the new office, the space that we used to utilize above the shop. We have a big room up there that used to be our engineering war room, like project room. Now we have our conference room. That space is empty, and we've offered that up as lab space. The people have come down and looked at it, and it's a potential site. They're also talking about maybe doing an addition at the wastewater treatment plant, the small lab that Dave has there. That he does in-house stuff that deals with daily treatment. Nothing certified out there, but doing an addition there or putting it in that space at the water company. If we could get a lab, obviously we have to look at all the numbers, but I think it might be able to sustain itself just based on, like, if you look at Barnstable
Private stuff.
County.
Yeah.
Barnstable County is owned by Barnstable, right? It's a town-owned lab.
Yeah.
We send stuff, everybody
Yeah,
sends stuff
that's
to them, the
about that.
Cape sends stuff to them. The real estate agents here, when you sell a home and you test the water, send stuff to them. If we had a lab
Well
here,
testing.
we could get all of that.
But Barnstable, just follow me through on this. So Barnstable though can't self-certify. They need to send their stuff to a third-party
No,
certifier?
they're certified lab,
And they can self-certify, they don't need a third-party involved?
no.
Interesting.
So we would be able to have a certified lab.
And we can self-certify.
So we could do certified lab work for any private individual, as well as all of David's sampling, all of
this is
Wanna
great.
Comet's
Huge.
sampling,
That
All in
all
favor,
of,
say aye.
when Natural Resources has to go out and
I love this.
check all the beaches,
All the time.
you
Yeah,
know,
I was
all
just gonna
through the
say,
summer.
they can use it down there too.
DPW, Rob does a ton of sampling around the landfill.
Interesting. Yeah, that we had a brief discussion
That's
about this in the recent past, and it had come up that we wouldn't, very likely, we would have to, the public entities would need a separate third party who's certified as opposed to self-certifying. So that's new information, it's important information.
But
And
Barnstable is is a certified lab.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I was going to say at the State of the Harbor symposium they had a couple months ago, they talked in moderate length about the benefits and the cost savings of having a town-owned lab. I know there's other arguments against it, but it sounds like
I think
without
when-
getting into the numbers,
Right,
just
I
the
think once
money that
we-
we'd save from sending stuff off from all the departments combined.
Once
Yeah.
we can get some
Yeah.
better numbers on what the costs are and, depending on the number of samples that are done, you need a lab director. There'd have to be probably a lab tech to help and some type of admin. So at a minimum, I would say maybe 3 people to work in that lab. And as business grew, you'd have to add to it. I know those are town employees and stuff, and we'd have to, above my pay grade, would have to decide if that's feasible or not.
But some of the preliminary numbers indicate that it is largely
Yeah,
self-sustaining.
I think when you add in the 40 to 60 grand we're doing a year and the 50 to 80 grand David's doing and whatever they're doing on the beaches, and I know Rob's number's pretty big sometimes depending on what's sampling going on at the dump and the landfill. If you just added all those together, it's, a couple $100,000.
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Well, it's not
There's
on
your
our
staff.
bailiwick, but it's definitely interesting, and
Yeah.
that was one of the big concerns I had, was that we would not be addressing one of the major concerns, but that's
The
good
expense
information.
of shipping,
Yeah.
Right.
we'll
Couriers.
send over bacteria samples that are only $25 or $30 at the lab,
Yeah.
but it costs me $85 to put them in a cooler
Yeah.
and fly them over there because
Right.
they gotta be there instantly.
Yeah, so
So
that's good information.
And you got to have the right person deliver it.
you gotta have the right person with a chain
Courier,
of custody.
chain of custody.
Yeah.
Weather
Is-
delays it.
So would that be done in-house, or would that, or retain earnings, or would that be any capital expense?
I'm not even really sure if
Okay.
we got to that point yet. I
Way,
think that,
way early for that.
Who would fall
yeah,
under?
I don't know if that would, I would think that would have to maybe be an interdepartment
Right.
type.
Yeah.
We kick in, they kick in, everybody kicks in, and then as far as like salaries or, they have to determine which department is that lab gonna be directly under. I would guess the Board of Health.
Yeah, and there's big policy decisions that are,
Roberto has an extensive
Well, outside
background
Right.
in that, so.
big policy decisions well outside our purview, but
There
it's
you
an
go.
interesting topic, and it's
Yeah.
good information, so
It
we
would,
appreciate
Yeah.
it would be great if we could have it.
Sounds like a service to the town.
Yeah.
Other questions, any thoughts? All right, we're gonna cut
Good
you
stuff.
free, and very much appreciate you coming in this
Yeah.
morning. And I'll email you. What's the title of the report?
It is Island Basin Water Management Act, permit renewal
Island Basin Water Management.
Act, permit renewal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's always an education.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
Thanks a lot.
Great. Unbelievable.
Okay, guys, so we're gonna try and just quickly get through and cut out of here way early if we can.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again, Mark.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Thank you. Any independent discussion we want to have? We're pretty good with proceeding to the ranking relative importance on the projects, if you haven't already completed them.
Is that a quick question?
Yeah,
I
please.
think you guys went over this, but I was also half reading, listening, and looking at the
Yeah.
pack and stuff. For the 1.5 million surveying, that comes out of the water enterprise fund, so that's ratepayers, right? So it's not a debt exclusion, it's not anything.
The 1.5 is going to
Where's
be
it
a
funded?
capital, my understanding is that it is actually going to be a capital
It
request.
says water enterprise fund in the,
Yeah, it'll come out of water enterprise, but it won't be out of retained earnings. It will be a borrowing.
so debt exclusion or something like that?
You can't do debt exclusions for enterprise funds. Debt exclusions are only for the general fund.
Right, so they would borrow,
They would pay, the ratepayers would pay the principal and interest.
That's my
on any
question.
borrowing.
ratepayers, okay.
Yeah, oh, as opposed to general public.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, misunderstood. Yeah, gotcha. That makes sense. Good question. Other questions or comments?
Did he, why, I was gonna ask, but I wanted him to get through it. I wonder why it wasn't high priority for them.
The study.
In there, when you mark it down, you have low, medium, high priority.
It
I
doesn't
think
look
it's high, considering.
It is high, but I think he had mentioned when we met, he said this was originally planned for, I think, 5 to 7 years out. And so I think it's moved up because of just planning purposes, but not so much for the urgency to have it. So I don't think it fell under that high, you know.
It doesn't need it tomorrow, but
Yeah.
good planning indicates get it done sooner.
Yeah,
rather
and I
than
think
later.
he understands that, you know, he said it's probably a 4 or 5 year until it's actually realized.
Yeah.
That I think that, you know, he's probably guessing in 5 to 7 years is when that's when it's urgent.
Yeah.
And so the planning stage is not the urgent stage, it's when it needs it, which is not right now.
It's
But,
interesting to look at, just because how we written down, I really try to, it's required,
Yeah.
prevent degradation, recommended, you know, it's needed, but not, you know.
It's kind of in
where
between
does
those
this
two.
fall?
In between the
gotcha.
two,
Yeah.
more or less.
Like almost 50-50.
Yeah.
Not I'm telling you what to write, but
Right.
trying to,
Yeah.
I like having these conversations with the group,
Yeah.
kind of where it
Were,
falls in
were you
priority.
referencing the form where you put priority 2 very important? Is that what you're referencing for his priority of it?
When he fills out his form,
Right. Because I know the request form that we drew up, it looks like he missed the low, medium, or high altogether.
Yeah.
But the form on the page before that looks like the old form from previous years. He listed as a 2 very important. So
oh, I see it,
just,
top
I mean,
right.
yeah,
Okay,
sounds very important.
This is,
yeah.
This will eventually be mandatory fields one day. Get the database together.
We get the gist.
think
Yeah,
it's
no, that's a good thing that you pointed that out, Peter. I think it's important to clarify that it is there, and it just seems like good discussion about where it fits in. And it seems to me just to have said that, you know, he's looking for the full 1.5 as a package, so that once the study work is done, they can proceed
Right.
without having to come back and ask for the implementation for the monitoring and test wells and for the actual the pump. Okay, anything else, other thoughts? Great, so the Rorys we have in front of us, 2 projects. And if you guys could go ahead and fill them out, and we'll give them to Rebecca.
Christy, do you think the new well site investigation is part of their strategic plan, or it's been moved up recently? From what,
Yeah, absolutely.
or is this a
Part of-
recent movement?
Say that again. Say that again. You mean?
You know, has it always been part of the strategic plan for 10, 20 years, or is it moved
I mean,
up quickly because of?
yeah,
South Road?
sometimes I struggle with that a little bit. Or no, actually, it's scheduled replacement that I struggle with.
Right.
To me, there's a time frame where it's no
Yeah.
longer a scheduled replacement. It's
It's kind of all
it's
subjective
repla-
to the way that we interpret.
Yeah,
There's
it is,
only like
you know.
certain things that are scheduled, like them
It
stock
is.
tax, radio stuff.
Autos, automobiles.
Huh?
The cop cars.
Yeah, cars.
Replacement.
Fire
Yes,
engines.
that is.
But if it's something that's
A fire
eventually
truck
going to
can
have to be
last for 40
replaced
years.
at some point, even if it's not scheduled, there
Don't
should be
even
some
drive it.
minor amount of
and I
25%,
That's
50%.
That's exactly what I
Exactly.
did.
That's the way that I see
Yep.
it. You know, if it's going to be replaced at some point in
Yeah.
the future, give it a little bit of recognition for the fact that even if it's not scheduled on a schedule to the day,
Yeah.
you know, if it was, then it'd be 100%. But
I mean, I
that's
think
where I see it.
Yeah, I think it supports a strategic plan. Water company always knows that at some day they're gonna have to do this. You know, it's not something that surprises them, comes up. You know, so to me that falls. To me, it is part of a strategic plan. You know, and I think
replacement for this one, like they're not
you know,
replacing anything.
I think Mark's adjustments
Yeah.
this
But
year,
this
moving
one,
it up,
I mean, main
definitely falls
replacement,
under
even
his,
though it's
you
not
know,
scheduled,
game
like
plan.
this
Yeah.
shore is coming
Yeah,
up
no,
this year,
I'm
so
doing,
give it, like,
I'm writing
50%.
in
I think because
strategic thinking.
because they had this new.
It's what it is.
Yeah,
It's not,
More than-
it's like,
more than
hey,
plan.
we can talk to each
Because
other
I
and
was
actually
thinking
make
about-
something.
That's true.
So I thought it
Town
was.
That's
strategic
true.
plan, too,
I-
you know.
I'm-
So the location might be new.
Obviously,
Yeah.
it's part of the town's
A
plan.
new
to have
well
everyone
somewhere
have
might
Well,
be
that's-
fresh
and that's-
strategic water
That's
delivered to their
to me.
house.
That's details of a strategic plan. That's added benefit or details to a strategic plan. I don't know. Those resilience is always kind of a no-brainer for me. Those ones are the easiest ones.
So I try to report back to the select board every, the next Wednesday,
Yeah.
committee reports.
Oh, yeah.
And try to give just a brief, just to keep the select board thinking about other members. Like, hey, this is the main thing we talked about. So when they see it, like, what's this new site investigation?
Yeah.
Just give them some background on it.
Yeah, that's good.
'Cause then you get to sit here for an hour and listen to Mark's
That you gotta,
explaining it.
and I'm worried about finance. Peter's not here. That first opening, the way he talked about building and new, and it gets all, and it's not. It's existing hookups. I just hooked up to town water in my old house. I mean, am I depleting the 14-million-year-old water? I don't know. I think it's just in the Nantucket discussion, Cisco, which I forgot all about, Christie. I wasn't even thinking about Cisco because this fire hydrant's been put out there before. Then we're not counting Nantucket. We're not counting Sconset. The state has gotta, they have to come here and figure out what we're really doing. That's gonna be big for Nantucket if they can do that. You know what I'm saying, Steve? I mean,
Yeah, I'm with you.
it's
No,
like,
I'm listening,
this is like a whole nother town that they don't even know we have that's hooked up to water.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
and it, I mean, it.
Sconset never had a meter. It was by the spigots.
Yeah.
That was how they did it. I mean, I'm telling you, it's true. Crazy.
I believe it. It appears Mark's got, the water company has got their finger on the pulse of that, and if we don't get full value for the different resources and, the amount of use this plan, we're gonna get it out of the next plan for sure. Other thoughts, comments, committee reports, we've got sewer Tuesday, and then sewer will be here next week. Any other committee reports, comments, good of the order, we're going in the right direction, we need to change, we're running out of time, if we need to make changes, I need to know. Think about it, let me know if you guys have any input on that. Date of our next meeting is Thursday, October 11th, here at 10:30 a.m. And with that, I'd like to remind you to turn in your worries to Rebecca and get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Excellent, thank you guys,
Thank you.
guys and gals.
Ladies and gentlemen,